From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you, and here's today's lineup. K-State's Brad White, Bob Larson, and Bob Weaber are joined by former K-State beef geneticist Dan Moser to offer several guidelines for making new bull purchases for the upcoming breeding season. How to sort through all of that genetic information to arrive at the best bull selection for one's herd. They'll also look at how many bulls to buy to cover a given herd. Then K-State's Dale Blasi will preview the 107th Cattlemen's Day here at K-State. It's set for March the 6th here on the campus. Further ahead, with his weekly commentary on life in rural Kansas, K-State's Gus Vanderhoven, along with much more here on Agriculture Today. For 25 years, K-State Research and Extension's Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services has been providing a no-cost, confidential place to call in and visit with an agricultural lawyer. Our experts are available to help you producers handle legal and financial issues. Explore your options and generate solutions. Call us at 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services.
We're back with Agriculture Today. I'm Britton Rucker. Coming to you from the Beef Cattle Institute at Kansas State University is another BCI Cattle Chat. Participating in this week's podcast are veterinarians Brad White and Bob Larson. Also joining them is cow-calf specialist Bob Weaber and Dan Moser from the American Angus Association. Brad tells us here the topics they'll be focusing on this time around.
We're going to talk some today about buying a bull. So we're going to talk about, as you look at that sale catalog, what are some of the criteria that I want to evaluate? What do I want to look at? What do I maybe want to ignore as I'm going to buy a bull? We're also going to talk about how do I figure out how many bulls I need. So thinking about that bull to cow ratio, and Bob will ask you for your thoughts on how many bulls does it take to adequately cover the cows in my environment. We're getting into, it's time to think about buying bulls. We've got bull sales coming up. You're getting catalogs coming out. You get these in the mail. And I want to ask you guys, as I catalogs over the last even 10 years, but for sure over the last 20, have become so information dense. I've got pictures, I've got charts, I've got all kinds of data. So if I'm going to buy a bull, what should I look at in that catalog? What should I care about? Do I have to know it all?
First of all, let's say buying a bull is one of the most important decisions that a cattle ranch makes. You're really, you're buying the genetics for the future. So, and those guys are pretty expensive, and I want as much predictability as I can get as I make that important and expensive decision. And so one of the things that I'm really interested in is the numbers, the accuracy of the numbers that I'm looking at. So one of the things that I look at is accuracy and kind of the important EPDs that I'm particularly interested in.
The one thing I'd say to that, though, Bob, is that when you're looking at a group of bulls of the same age,
yes,
accuracy is going to be about the same unless you're looking at some bulls that have genomic testing and others that aren't. Now, if you're including AI in there, then that's a whole different sort of scenario, and you can really improve accuracy by using a proven bull. But,
right.
A lot of sale catalogs don't include the accuracy because
they're all similar.
They're all the same within that
the
offering.
one difference, and this is pretty new, is because you're exactly. I'm usually buying yearling bulls, and so the accuracy is all going to be relatively low and relatively similar. But with some of the new genomic enhanced EPDs, I can actually get some accuracy in those older age traits that I was missing before. So I think that's been one of the real changes. And now I'm going to leave track of time. But in my worldview, the last few years.
Yeah, I think the recent adoption of broad-scale genomic testing by breeders has really changed that landscape. And so I encourage producers, when you get the catalog, go and find, and I think breeders are hopefully trying to make this more transparent to their customers. Either we genotyped all the bulls, and so they have relatively the same levels of accuracy, or here's the bulls we genotyped, a subset of those. And if you can't discern that easily in the catalog, that should raise a question to go find more information.
So let me follow that a little bit, because you talked about the differences among breeders. So as you're selecting breeders, what are some of the important topics for you to look at?
as we sort breeders, understanding kind of their reputation. Certainly, breeders have differing reputations in terms of customer service, data collection activities, maybe association engagement, commercial marketing strategies. All those kinds of things play into kind of that breeder's view. And in general, most producers are going to buy, commercial producers are going to buy bulls within a 100-mile radius of their farm or ranch. And so I really encourage folks to get to know several seed stock vendors, get to know them very well. And the flip side of that is if you're a seed stock vendor, go learn about your customer's business, be engaged in that business.
What should I look at? What should I focus on? Because there's a lot of numbers in there. Are there certain numbers that you would recommend I evaluate more than others?
Absolutely. I would say that focus first. I always tell people to look first at the economic indexes or dollar values or whatever that breed calls them. But those are EPDs for profit, and those put many, if not all, the other EPDs together to fit a certain scenario. But it's important to get the right ones.
Yeah, alignment of that scenario is key, as you were saying, Dan. Getting that picture of what's my production circumstance and picking the index that aligns that is essential. And that's maybe one of the biggest mistakes producers make in indexes is they select bulls on one index and actually raise calves and market them under a different scenario.
So you should select based on an index, but make sure it fits your operation. Do I still need to look at the bulls, or can I just go off the numbers?
Well, I think it's really important to still go look at the bulls. Not, and we're getting better, but not every trait that's important is evaluated with an EPD objectively. So some things like, well, did they pass their breeding soundness exam, Dr. Larson?
Absolutely.
That's a key one, right?
That's the most important.
Feet and legs, we've got feet and leg EPDs, but
we still need to look at
feet and legs, right? So going out and putting eyeballs on them, making sure that the bulls are structurally correct enough to go out and service cows for a long time. Type and kind preferences are still important, right? We've got to be able to go out, and I think it's a key thing to, if we've got a group of cows, it's not unreasonable to go out and go, man, I really love the way these cows look.
All right. Now we want to talk about how many bulls do I want to buy? And Bob, I'm going to look at you, and then I'm going to look at you on the buyer side. I'm going to look at Bob Weaber on the seller side. What do you guys say when people ask you the question of how many bulls do I need for my herd? And I'll give you the scenario. I've got 100 cows.
Actually, it's a very good question, and I don't mind taking it, but it's a difficult one because it does matter a lot on the age of the bull. We don't expect young bulls to cover as many cows as older bulls. It depends on size of pasture, terrain of pasture, and those types of things as well. The reality is, because I've come back to this bull purchase is so important, and it's a big expense, I actually want to have as few of bulls as possible that will cover my needs. And that's the hard number to get to. And one of the ways that I can make sure, but I don't ever want to have too few. It's like I don't want to drop off of that edge. And so I think that there's, you're not only selecting the right bull, but then manage him. So watch closely during the breeding season, looking for signs of injury, looking for signs of declining ability to mate, and be able to interact with the herd during the breeding season. Don't just turn them out and ignore them. And if I do that, maybe I can get by with a few fewer bulls. The national average is around 1 bull per 30 cows, so that'd be a mature bull per 30 cows. And I think that's fine. It's certainly not stretching our bulls. I think some bulls could do more than that. But if I ask a bull to do more than 30 cows, then I'm going to have to manage that really closely because I'm asking him to kind of be stretched.
Depends on where you are, what your environment is,
exactly.
How much ground they have to cover, and single versus multi-sire groups are a little bit different.
So
Bob,
it depends a lot.
Bob, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think Dr. Larson's comments are spot on. I think I always look at it sort of as what things could go wrong? What are the exceptions? Really short calving intervals. So if you've got a cow herd that's really front loaded and you have a whole bunch of cows coming in estrus, 1 to 30 might not be enough, especially if one bull is a failure, right? If we got one at turnout, we did our breeding soundness exams, and for some reason he's just not breeding cows, then that load gets pushed to other bulls. And if there's a way to sort of wreck reproduction in a cow herd, turning out bad bulls is a quick way to do it. So I always think about, well, let's do our math, and if we've got 100, I sort of lean towards the 1 to 25 number, and then I want to make sure that I've got maybe an extra yearling bull or a couple extra yearling bulls kind of in the development sort of stage so that I can fall back on them if I need to actually turn them out and cover some extra cows.
I'm gonna go back to what you and Dan said earlier about when you purchase a bull, you've got that relationship with the breeder, and if you've got that relationship with the breeder, that can help cover you when you have problems, right? Yeah. So there's often that they've got another bull, or hey, at least I've got that contact already made. So building those relationships is sometimes easier insurance than having an extra bull actually physically on my place.
Well, but realizing, and I'm coming at it now from the seed stock perspective, how many extra bulls am I supposed to have around?
Yeah.
If I sold 100 bulls, I'm probably going to have a few, and I can serve a few customers that get in a pinch. I can't serve all of them.
Not everybody. Absolutely.
That's the thing, if somebody that's been with me a long time, buying bulls a long time, buys enough bulls to begin with, I'm more likely to be, happy to help
Absolutely.
them.
But that's where you have that relationship, and then even in the scenario you don't have enough bulls, you'll probably know somebody that does. So when you get in a pinch, if you've got those relationships, you can work through.
The other jam though that comes with that is, and I agree with Dan's comment that we try and replace bulls as needed. The trouble is they're almost never as good as the bulls that they bought. Yeah. And if you're buying really front-end bulls, coming back and getting one that maybe it was a young calf, didn't make the sale, whatever, it's still not the same. No. So having that, I think the other piece is that, folks buy yearling bulls and they expect them to perform like
I was going to be
cows.
careful because I don't want anybody to think that I'm talking about turning yearling bulls out with 30 cows.
Yeah, my rule of thumb is figure out how many months old the bull is when he's turned out with the cows. Yep. And it's 1 cow per month at turnout.
That's a good
and,
1 cow per
and
month.
For a 45-day season. So if you got a 90-day breeding window and you got 2 yearling bulls that you want to use, turn out one the first 45 days, pick him up, turn out the second one the second 45 days.
Because that's a long time for them.
It's a long time for yearling bulls.
Yep, going into production.
From the Beef Cattle Institute at Kansas State University, that was Brad White, Bob Larson, Bob Weaber, and Dan Moser. Be sure to hear the entire podcast at beefcattleinstitute.org. For Agriculture Today, I'm Britton Recker, and we'll be back with more after this short break over the K-State Radio Network.
With the shortage of primary care physicians, especially in rural areas, health education and disease prevention are vital. K-State research and extension programs address quality of life, personal development, and health behaviors across all life stages of all social economic groups. To learn more about health education, one of K-State Research and Extension's 5 grand challenges, visit www.ksre.ksu.edu.
You're tuned in to Agriculture Today. Welcome back as we give you a full look ahead now to the event which you cattle producers should have on your calendar if you don't already. The date is Friday, March the 6th, and the location, Weber Hall and Arena on the Kansas State University campus for the 107th Annual Cattlemen's Day at K-State. Once again, the organizers have assembled another great lineup for Cattlemen's Day, and to give you a look at it now, Dale Blasi. He's a beef cattle specialist, K-State Research and Extension. Dale always in on the planning of this event. And Dale, this is a pretty good time for cattle producers to get together. The markets are pretty solid right now. Things are going well, so ought to be an upbeat event on the 6th of March.
Well, I think so, Eric. This is the 107th iteration of this annual event to celebrate the Kansas beef industry in our state, and I think the planning committee has done a wonderful job of pulling together another excellent program for this year.
For somebody who hasn't ever been at Cattlemen's Day, and it's hard to imagine a cattle producer in Kansas who hasn't at some point, remind of the purpose of this event.
Well, the overall intent of this event is to bring forward many of the various contemporary issues of the day to inform our attendees of what is happening in our industry, and more importantly, to share with the attendees the results of the various research and educational efforts that have been ongoing growing in our department over the past year.
So we'll share highlights and examples of all of that. It'll get going, though, with the registration around 8 o'clock in the morning. We share that because there's lots going on before the formal program itself gets rolling at 10 o'clock, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, the night before, we'll be sponsoring the Stockman's Dinner. It's sponsored by the Livestock Meat and Industry Council at the Hotel 4 Points by Sheraton. This year, Dr. Patsy Houghton is being honored as a Stockman of the Year, and you still have plenty of time to RSVP by February the 21st, and the website there is at asi.ksu.edu/Stockman's Dinner, one word, Stockman's Dinner.
So if you would like to be part of the Stockman's Dinner, the 50th edition there, honoring Patsy Houghton, asi.ksu.edu/Stockman's Dinner. Be reserving your spot for that. You'd like folks to come in and take in the trade and educational exhibits prior to Cattlemen's Day itself, right?
That's right. It kicks off at 8 o'clock, and, for a one-day event, we're very, very proud of the attendees that do choose to come in on a Friday and share everything. So, it's an opportunity for attendees to get the latest, greatest offering of various products, services, what have you, by many of the attendees. We'll have in excess of 70 or so commercial booths there in the arena at Weber Hall.
It's a great time to spend a couple of hours on the floor of Weber Arena, taking in all of that. Then the program itself. Around 10 o'clock, you've a couple of keynoters kicking things off. Tell us about those.
Well, our new department chair, Dr. Mike Day, will be welcoming the attendees to Weber 123, our major classroom, and introduce, as well as our new permanent dean, Dr. Ernie Minton, College of Agriculture dean. After that, an alumnus of our department, Lorna Marshall, who works for Select Sires and is VP of Beef Programs, will speak upon the genetic and reproductive trends in the global beef industry. Her presentation will be followed by Dr. Daryl Peel out of Oklahoma State University, who will talk about the opportunities for the beef industry in a dynamic global meat market.
So they will set the table for the entire day. Excellent presentations, both by Lorna Marshall of Select Sires and Oklahoma State University's Daryl Peel, whom you hear from frequently on this broadcast. That'll be the morning program itself. Then there's the sponsored lunch, and that's always a highlight day.
Yes, it is. And, U.S. Premium Beef has been there with us for almost 15, if not 20 years, providing us the brisket to cook and prepared by Cox Brothers here locally in town. We account for a full hour for folks to visit amongst themselves. It really is a good time to kind of digest, if you will, the morning's activities in preparation for the afternoon events that we have planned for the attendees.
And then fill us in on those. This is a series of breakout sessions at a number of sites, actually, covering contemporary topics in cattle production, correct?
Right. And so a lot of stuff happening, as you indicated, Eric. There'll be a good presentation on factors influencing sale prices of calves. Dr. Odie, Dr. Fike, and Esther McCabe have done a really good job of dissecting the superior auction data, and there's some really good information that will come forth from that presentation. Our reproductive physiologists, Dr. Sandy Johnson and David Grieger, will talk about an update on insemination timing with sex semen, split time AI, and embryonic loss, and then there'll just be a general question and answer session entitled All Things Reproduction. So we're looking forward to that. We also have, from a different perspective, a graduate student from Mexico, Francisco Najar Villarreal, will be speaking about current changes in the Mexican meat industry and the impact of Mexico's new beef quality grading system. I think everybody appreciates the importance of the Mexican economy in terms of our beef exports, and so I think some folks will find that rather interesting. And then, occurring concurrently out at the Purebred Unit multi-purpose room, Dr. A.J. Tarpoff, the department's extension beef veterinarian, will present a calving school entitled Tools, Timeframes, and Intervention Tips. And I think that'd be very timely for folks as we certainly get into the onset of our spring calving season. Occurring about the same time, we have a few folks from the K-State Veterinary Health Center talking about where ruminant digestion begins. They'll have some cannulated animals there on site, so I think there'll be a lot of good learning information for folks curious about that. And then at 1:15, out at the Beef Stocker Unit located at 430 Marlette Avenue, Justin Wagner, our Extension Beef Specialist, will be talking about forage sampling and analysis 101, and then afterwards there's a tour at the Stocker Unit.
And that latter tour you're pretty excited about because that's something that you oversee closely, so you've a lot to show off there, Dale.
Yes, sir.
Then the day will come to a conclusion, as it always does, with the annual Legacy Bull and Female Sale. This is the 43rd edition at the Stanley Stout Center. And this is where young people get a chance to plan out a sale, and of course, quality stock are being made available through this as well.
That's right. There'll be over 40 feed efficiency tested bulls, and of that 40 head, there'll be 20 Angus, 10 Simmental, and 10 Hereford bulls offered up for sale. In turn, there will be an additional 37 females, 1 elite Simmental heifer, 15 fall-bred females, and 21 commercial heifers. And also from our KSU horse unit, there will be 5 AQHA Ranch Performance horses offered up for sale as well.
So that auction rolls at 4 o'clock at the Stanley Stout Center. That'll cap off Cattlemen's Day 2020 here at the university. Dale, it's all put together. It's just a matter of producers reserving their spot, if at all possible, ahead of time. What's the procedure for doing so?
Well, the deadline to register is February the 28th. The cost online is $25 if you register online at ksubeef.org. On-site registration is $35, and again, February the 28th.
That is the date to register and get the break on the registration fee. You can also register at the door. But again, ksubeef.org. You can also, if you'd rather, call this number and take care of this as well, 785-532-1267. That's 785-532-1267. But lastly, Dale, not only all of this going on, but it's simply an opportunity for cattle producers around the state to get together and, as we say, network, talk with each other informally as well as take in the formal presentations.
Absolutely. And you know, there's quite a legacy here. And you think about this program. I mean, you go back into the history and you hear about how it was basically postponed during the World War II years. It's been going a long time, Eric, and it's incumbent upon us presently in department and certainly into the future to maintain a very vibrant event for our stakeholders out there in the state.
Well, hats off once again to you and your team for coming up with another outstanding program that will comprise Cattlemen's Day. We'll look for you on March the 6th at Weber Hall and Arena. Thanks, Dale, for the preview.
Thank you, Eric.
Dale Blasi, beef cattle specialist with K-State Research and Extension. Again, we'd like to see you as well at Cattlemen's Day 2020 at K-State on Friday the 6th. More information, if you should need it, at ksubeef.org. And again, don't forget that event the night preceding Cattlemen's Day, as Dale mentioned, the Stockman's Dinner, honoring Patsy Houghton and her several decades of service to the beef cattle industry. Thursday, March the 5th at 6 in the evening at the 4 Points by Sheraton, just off of Fort Riley Boulevard there in southwest Manhattan. RSVP for that by February the 21st at asi.ksu.edu/Stockman's Dinner. Or call Lois Schreiner at the Animal Sciences and Industry Department, 785-532-1267. You are tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we'll break away for a few moments now. When we come back, today's agricultural news headlines and more here on the K-State Radio Network.
Did you eat today? Thank a farmer. A way to get more involved in agriculture is through 4-H and FFA. Through 4-H and FFA, we have been given multiple opportunities to grow as leaders and learn more about agriculture.
You can learn skills related to jobs, public speaking skills, and you get the opportunity to travel around the country and meet new people.
If you want more information about getting more involved in 4-H and FFA, visit them on their websites at kansasffa.org and kansas4h.org.
Coming to you from the campus of Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Next up for you, today's agricultural news headlines. These courtesy in part of DTN. The USDA's February Grain Supply and Demand Report was released yesterday morning. Rod Bain tells us what it revealed about soybeans and wheat from a supply, export, and price perspective.
What are some of the highlights from USDA's latest World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates? An increased global soybean production forecast fueled by a 2 million bushel month-over-month increase in Brazil's bean crop. Despite that, U.S. soybean exports are forecasted up 50 million bushels from the previous month, partly reflecting increased imports for China. The season-ending average price for soybeans, however, was lowered a quarter at $8.75 a bushel due to reported prices to date. U.S. wheat exports per USDA are expected to be at a 3-year high, which in turn should lower domestic ending stocks to a forecasted 5-year low. No change in the corn season ending average price in February, yet of note, lower global ending stocks. And in domestic ag production, the all-orange production forecast this month was lowered 2% from January by USDA and down slightly from the previous year. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Now, even though the U.S.-China trade deal is in effect, the USDA did make few changes in its new export forecasts. Here's why, from the USDA's Gary Crawford.
Some people were expecting Tuesday's USDA supply and demand forecasts to show big changes in crop export prospects because of the U.S.-China trade deal, but instead,
by and large, not a lot of changes.
USDA's chief economist Rob Johansson says there are 3 reasons why the China deal did not cause big increases in USDA crop export forecasts. First reason,
an increase in exports to China oftentimes will come from a decrease in exports to another part of the globe.
And the USDA report only shows net exports, not sales to any one country. Second, the USDA report makes forecasts on a marketing year basis for crops. And the marketing year ends this summer, but the China purchase commitments were made on a calendar year basis.
So any changes in China purchases could occur now, could occur in October or November when we're harvesting our crop.
And that's when prices for most crops would be lower, chances of sales higher. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
Following up on that, U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer fully expects that China will live up to the terms of the Phase 1 trade deal negotiated between the two sides. In comments to USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue on the Secretary's podcast, Lighthizer said the enforcement provisions in the deal are very strong and solid, but he also offered an interesting observation when it comes to the agreements. In the most cases with agreements, there are differences in meanings when it comes to the different languages, he notes. He pointed to several agreements negotiated with China over the past 10 years, stating, quoting here, "I found out none of those were in writing. They were just a press release from the United States." Lighthizer went on to say it was, in his words, breathtaking to hear about these agreements, but there was no actual agreement in writing, literally nothing there, not in Chinese nor in English. The Phase 1 agreement is in both languages. It's been a dispute settlement and enforceability checked, and it has been signed at the highest levels of government, according to Lighthizer. He went on to say, "I think the Chinese want to do this. I think the ag purchases in particular are in their interests for sure." And continuing with his words, "I think they are going to do it, but if they do not, we have an enforcement mechanism to insist on it." And a recent biofuels industry victory in a federal appeals court could spell the end of the small refinery exemptions program in its current form. That's according to the lead attorney for the ethanol industry in the case in comments yesterday. An attorney with the law firm Phillips, Pillsbury, Winthrop, Sean Pittman, LLP, in Washington, D.C., Matthew Morrison was representing the Renewable Fuels Association and the National Corn Growers Association, among others. On January the 24th, the court ruled the EPA did not have the authority to issue small refinery exemption extensions to 3 companies that were not originally granted waivers in 2017 and 2018. The court also found the EPA, quoting here, abused its discretion by not explaining its conclusion that a small refinery could suffer disproportionate economic hardship while also maintaining that refiners passed the RFS compliance costs onto consumers at the pump. The court's ruling, Morrison says, applies to at least small refineries, those producing 75,000 barrels or less per day, operating in 6 states in the 10th Circuit. Those 6 states include Kansas, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. Morrison said the big question is whether the EPA is going to ask for a review of this decision. And on that score, he went on to say a Supreme Court review is highly unlikely because usually the Supreme Court only takes cases where an appeals court has a split opinion. This recent ruling in the 10th Circuit was unanimous. The Beef Quality Assurance Program has updated its online training modules now. Scarlett Higgins tells us here that the changes help create a more realistic and user-friendly experience for participants.
The enhanced online courses are available to first-time participants and those who are getting recertified in beef quality assurance, which is required every 3 years. The modules are tailored to each participant by interest and industry sector, including cow-calf, stocker, and feed yard. The Beef Quality Assurance Program, funded by the Beef Checkoff, is free to complete online and is accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, making it convenient for livestock producers. In addition, participants are able to start and stop the training sessions at their convenience without losing progress. The online modules, which have been used by more than 100,000 in the cattle industry to date, incorporate a wealth of input from people who implement the practices every day, as well as industry experts. BQA certifications also are available at in-person training events offered through KLA and the Kansas Beef Council at various locations throughout the year. Since its inception, the Beef Quality Assurance Program has remained committed to educating and training cattle producers on the proper care and handling of livestock and has touched more than 85% of beef producers in the U.S. For more information about the Beef Quality Assurance Program or the online certification, visit www.bqa.org. I'm Scarlett Higgins.
And a quick calendar item ahead of the break. K-State Research and Extension is partnering with Fort Hays State University to host a Thriving Across Generations Succession Planning in Rural Kansas program on Wednesday, March the 11th. That'll take place at the Fort Hays State University Memorial Union. For more details, contact the Cottonwood District Extension Office, 785-628-9430. This is Agriculture Today.
When you are in need of timely, reliable, and trusted information, K-State Research and Extension is here. Whether it's organizing people, information, or resources, they have the necessary tools. Community comes first for K-State Research and Extension. For more information and to connect with your county's extension agents, visit www.ksre.k-state.edu.
This is Agriculture Today. Stop, look, and listen.
I've always teased the kids as we worked together when they were small.
That's Gus Vanderhoeven of Kansas State University with comment on life in rural Kansas.
When my oldest son Guido was 7 or 8 years old, he helped me build a corral next to what we called the old house. That was in Blacksburg, Virginia. As far as I remember, it was one of the first big projects where he helped me. The fact that the project was for him, for his pony, made it an educational experience. I still see him staggering under the weight of a fence post from the stack behind the old barn. Even though, as a newborn baby, he was a tiny baby, he started to grow up with square shoulders and stout, quite strong. I've always teased the kids as we worked together when they were small. Come on, do you have to cut the posts? I was digging holes, the post holes in the deep orchard soil where I had planted a small paddock for the Chincoteague pony we named Star. When we moved to Kansas years later, we brought the then aged pony along. He died on the hill here. That was a long time and several horses ago. When we arrived here in Manhattan, the boys helped me quickly to put up a temporary shelter for the pony, which we soon replaced with a permanent one, to which is attached a corral. After Star died, it has become home first to Pop-Tart, Martine's pony, the youngest of the 5, who now a grown man with family of his own. He has the horse genes, if horse genes exist and can be passed on. As time went by, Pop-Tart gave us 2 foals. Thunder was born during a thunderstorm, and later Misty, born on a morning I couldn't see the town below us. Then later, Flash came home. He was the father of the 2 foals, but by then he was gelded. The funny thing was, he had been gelded before, but then in the barn where he was, he started to breed. Flash was 3/4 Arabian, and he threw some neat foals. In winter time, I would bring the 4 horses home. Then Thunder went to California, and Misty went to my older son's family, by then living near Holton in northeast Kansas. When they moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, Misty came back home, waiting for them to return. But they never did, until recently. But now their children, all but Mandy, have flown the coop. Time flies. Actually, at times, time does not fly. It creeps by. As time creeps by, old fence posts rot. The railing keep the posts standing. But when you touch them, they wobble. That is what happened here on the hill. The small barn still stands strong and sturdy, but the corral still standing was slowly slipping, and it irritated me. I'd used locust post, green post, but they did not last as long as expected. I know the Osage orange post would have lasted. We all know that, but they are very hard to nail in. So locust post is what I used. And they have done the job while the ponies were an issue, but all the horses are now dead. Flash was hit by lightning during a nasty storm on the farm, and Pop-Tart was 43 and Misty 32 years old. I found him, Flash, a few days after the storm on the hills, and so had the coyotes. I have his and 2 other skulls looking at me when I drive into the carport. Welcome home. Some teeth are missing. 1 tooth of flesh, a front tooth, I have on a leather strap, and at the right occasion I wear it. It looks like a bear claw, but it is not. It is flesh tooth. When you have animals, you have to have strong fences to hold them. The corral on the farm is standing strong and ready next to the pole barn we built. It all has served its purpose, but no horses anymore. So, why did the wobbly post of the corral here at home annoy me? Because of the good memories. I know fences and gates are work, but when my grandson Matt called and said he and his family wanted to come up for a day, I started planning. Matt, a Marine, is strong. His 2 sons, Henry and Gus, are 3 years old. They are twins. I decided to do some work here on the hill where the twins could putter around us and we could keep an eye on them and enjoy them. When Cassidy, their mom, came outside with them, the boys quickly joined us. When before I knew where I had placed the spade, it no longer was there. Either Henry or Gus got it and gleefully pulled it behind them as a single furrow plow. When I lifted the boys to place them in a freshly dug hole, they objected, but I noticed how heavy they were, no joke. With the leisure pace we worked, we managed to get the post and the corner post set. Pulling some of the old stumps out was a job. Oh yes, I know, there is equipment to do that. We used manpower as well as brain power, and while at it, we enjoyed the boys. That afternoon, there was a connection of 4 generations building fence. The boys pulled shovels. Next day, I pulled and set 2 more posts by myself. Great job. Stupid. The trouble is, I can now barely lift a cup of coffee in the morning. You can't keep up with a Marine. Don't try it.
Gus van der Hoeven of Kansas State University with his weekly commentary on life in rural Kansas. That'll do it for this Wednesday edition. Once more, if you haven't looked into our podcast service, we'd invite you to do so. It is posted each day to this website, agtoday.net. You can also have it downloaded directly to your mobile device. Find out more at agtoday.net. Meantime, thanks for listening in right here today. Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today over this, the K-State Radio Network.